Hi, my name is Benjamin Tzou, and I'm a senior at Auburn High School. Today, I will be discussing my project on applying thermoelectric generators to the motors of electric vehicles, also known as EVs. So EVs have been slowly increasing in popularity recently due to its decrease in price and increase in mileage per charge, and also rising environmental awareness. However, there are still many issues that prevent its widespread use, especially in the US. Some of these factors include long charging time, energy storage, and energy consumption efficiency. This project targets energy consumption and somewhat in energy storage. The motors in EVs produce a lot of excess heat, similar to how a phone or computer overheats when you're using it. These devices produce heat and it's wasting energy. Um, this Because its primary function is not producing heat, it means that these devices are not efficiently using their energy. So how do thermoelectric generators come into play to deal with these with motors and their excess heat? I came up with the idea of applying the Seebeck effect to the motors of the EVs. The Seebeck effect, which thermoelectric generators use, uses the temperature difference of the hot motor and the cooler outside temperature, and the two semiconductors or conductors within the thermoelectric generators creates a voltage. This idea allows the energy wasted by the motor through heat to be recycled back into the motor, ultimately increasing the energy consumption and efficiency. So in order to test this experiment, I use a Peltier module heating elements, a power supply, digital multimeter, heat sink, rubber trivet, and a stopwatch. So basically what I did is I connected two heating elements, which are set at the 95 degrees Celsius or 140 degrees Celsius. The 95 degrees Celsius represents the average temperature of a motor in an EV, and 140 degrees Celsius is the highest recorded, the maximum temperature a motor can reach. I connected these to a power supply, which by controlling the voltage that the power supply is sending to the heating elements, it controls the temperature. I then connected my Peltier devices, which act as the thermoelectric generators, to a digital multimeter in order to record the voltage produced. So this is a Peltier module, and this is a Peltier module with a heatsink applied. So I also made sure that these Peltier modules were in room temperature, because if they were too hot, then it would result in a low temperature difference. And so if it's too cold, then it would create a high temperature difference. So if I have maintained a constant temperature, which is room temperature, for all my experiments, it would be the results would not vary too much. So I tested after all of that, I placed the Peltier module either without heatsink or with heatsink. I placed it on the heating element and started the stopwatch and looked at the voltage produced. I then repeated these steps multiple times, 10 times for both the uh, without heatsink and 10 times for the with heatsink for 95 degrees Celsius. But for 140 degrees Celsius, I only did it 5 times per trial. So um, below are my results, which show the graph of the comparison of without heatsink and with heatsink of the Peltier modules at 95 degrees Celsius. And figure 2 shows the temperature, the voltage produced by the without heatsink and with heatsink of the Peltier modules at 140 degrees Celsius. Now, for 95 degrees Celsius, the Peltier module on its own can produce 1.41 volts and on average, and for with the heatsink, it produces 2.577 volts. So with the heatsink, it produces almost double the amount that the Peltier module can produce on its own. For 140 degrees Celsius, it produced 2.824 volts by itself and 3.127 volts with heatsink. And these are all the maximum volts I recorded. For figure 3, after recording the increase and decrease of the voltage produced by the Peltier modules, the orange represents the Peltier module with the heatsink, and the blue represents the Peltier module without the heatsink. So it shows that once it reaches its peak, it starts declining. And so it this is because once it reaches its peak, the temperature permeates through the other side, decreasing the overall temperature difference. And with the heatsink, it tends to decrease a little slower because of its extra surface area created by the heatsink. So there are some limitations. The reason why that I was unable to produce 10 trials and only did 5 for the 140 degrees Celsius is because all 10 of my Peltier modules ended up dying out and malfunction and stop working. This is because these Peltier modules are pretty fragile, and so once it reaches these high temperatures, sometimes it's unable to continue producing voltage, and which results in lack of it malfunctions and stops working. Another thing is that once it reaches its peak voltage production, the modules are unable to maintain that peak voltage production and start declining. So some future directions is to research improvements of these thermoelectric generators, especially to not malfunction within the temperature range of these motors, and also to increase the lifespan of these thermoelectric generators to just not die out with these temperatures. And another thing is to implement a better cooling mechanism for the heatsink to maintain its maximum voltage generation. Overall, these thermoelectric generators seem to be pretty beneficial to increase the overall efficiency of energy consumption for these motors, mainly because by itself, for one motor, you can place about 154 Peltier modules, and so that means that one Peltier module, 154 Peltier modules by itself on the motor, it can produce about 217.14 volts on average, and for a Peltier module with the heatsink, it can produce 396.858 volts. So these Peltier modules prove to be beneficial for its applications in reducing energy consumption, but it requires future research. Thank you so much for listening to my project, and I hope you have a great day.